Hello and welcome to the JSA studio. I'm your host, as always, Nathan, and today I'm coming at you with another Detroit Lions roster breakdown video. Today we will be talking about the wide receiver position. This is also the first video in which I have pre-recorded, as I'm currently on a 2-week vacation. So if new information has come to light that affects anything in this video from the date of this recording until the time you are watching it, I apologize, but I didn't want to not post on the channel for 2 weeks, so I decided to record some videos ahead of time. We're going to start this video off by talking about the first team All-Pro, two-time Pro Bowl wide receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown. He is one of the 10 best wide receivers in the game of football. He's pushing into the top 5 of that discussion as well, in my opinion, but I'm not quite ready to place him in the top 5 yet. I believe he is relatively unquestionably at this point the best slot receiver in the NFL. I think there are better receivers at the X position and better receivers at the Z position. However, I don't think there's anybody that is better as a slot receiver than Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I'm not really sure why there are people out there that try to, I guess, minimize his impact on the game or how good he is because he's in the slot. They call him a reception merchant or a slot merchant. Well, I guess that's true, but I don't understand why that's a negative. The fact of the matter is that there is a bigger gap between him and the average slot receiver than there is between someone like Jamar Chase and the average Z receiver in the NFL. Mainly because right now the wide receiver talent in the NFL is absolutely absurd. And there's a tremendous amount of, specifically at the Z position as well. You can argue at the X position there's maybe a little bit less than the Z, but it's pretty close. And then there is not nearly as many slot receivers that are genuinely like really good. And there's only one that I think is truly elite, and that's Amon-Ra St. Brown. This offseason, he signed a 4-year, $120 million extension, $30 million a year. That is the going rate for elite caliber wide receivers. And I believe he's currently the second highest paid wide receiver behind Justin Jefferson. I think once CD Lamb gets his contract done, then he'll probably be the third highest paid wide receiver. And then when some wide receivers hit the offseason next year, I believe he's probably going to be pushed further down that list once someone like Jamar Chase or Jalen Waddle or potentially even Devonta Smith hits the open market or at least starts to get their contract situation sorted out. There's also a definitive possibility with Brandon Ayuk potentially getting traded that he signs a contract extension north of $30 million a year as well. So I don't think Amon-Ra St. Brown will be in the top 5 highest paid wide receivers for very much longer, but it's still a significant amount of money, and yes, he is worth it, and I love the extension because I want Amon-Ra St. Brown to be here for, I guess, his entire career, really, if I'm being honest with you. Moving on from the starting slot receiver for this team is going to be the starting Z receiver, which will be Jameson Williams. And he has dealt with injuries, coming off of an injury when he got drafted in the first round, 12th overall for this team, as well as missing the first 4 games last year. When it comes to him actually playing football, this is effectively his second year instead of his third year, even though technically speaking it is his third year. I believe he only played 4 or 5 games his rookie year and didn't even really play the first 2 games of that. He was kind of just there. I'm not even positive he got targeted. But at the second year, he was a little bit more involved, but I think it was pretty obvious that Ben Johnson did not particularly know how to use Jameson Williams very well this past season. And if I'm being entirely honest with you, I'm not entirely sure that has changed a little bit. However, there are indications that potentially Ben Johnson might open up the offense a little bit more and might be willing to take some more deep shots this year. Also, Jameson Williams has looked phenomenal in camp, according to pretty much everybody that's been around the Detroit Lions beat. He has been a legitimate fantastic football player for them so far. And if he turns into the player that I thought he was going to be coming out of Alabama, the Lions have a top 5 receiving core, if you include tight ends, which I do, in the NFL. I think Jameson Williams is going to be a phenomenal player, assuming he has the targets to actually put up the production. I think he could also end up in the Pro Bowl conversation. However, I do think it's very likely he is target number 3. Number 1 is going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. Number 2, I think, is probably going to be Sam Laporta. And Jameson Williams will probably be number 3. Again, that could be someone different. It could be someone like Khalif Raymond or somebody who steps up to fill the Josh Reynolds role. But I think Jameson Williams is probably going to be the player targeted the 3rd most on this team, and I am excited to see what he can do, provided that he stays healthy, which obviously I want him to stay healthy. I am excited to see what he can do given consistent opportunity to actually play the wide receiver position, which was another problem with Ben Johnson early on last year. It was Jameson Williams was effectively just a decoy and a gimmick player. And I think this year they're kind of just letting him be a wide receiver. And that has me excited because I had a top 10 grade on him when he came out as a wide receiver, not as a gimmick player. So I think that the year 3 breakout for JMO is on the horizon. Now, the Lions don't particularly have an X receiver on their roster. In terms of what an X role is typically defined as, a bigger-bodied physical receiver that is a jump ball kind of player, I don't think the Lions have that on their team right now. However, I think Donovan Peoples-Jones is probably the player that is the closest to filling out that role. I don't know if he's going to be the 3rd starting wide receiver, technically speaking, because there will be 3 starting wide receivers. However, I do think he will probably end up being the wide receiver with the 3rd most snaps played. I think he and Khalif Raymond, depending upon what the team needs that week and what the game plan is, are probably going to rotate as wide receiver 3. Also, it could be situationally. If it's 3rd and 5, you might not need someone with Khalif Raymond's speed, and instead you want to go with a more physical receiver that can make a catch in traffic if need be, and that would be Donovan Peoples-Jones. He is, I believe, a phenomenally underrated football player. He's not a superstar by any means, but I think he is a perfect wide receiver 3 for a high-powered offense. I think he can just be somebody that's going to catch 40 to 50 balls for like 550 to 700 yards and 5 or 6 touchdowns. I think that is a reasonable ceiling for him as a wide receiver 3 in this offense. And I think that just all in all, he is a reliable player, and he is someone that is going to help this offense. All that being said, he also might not make the roster. It is a definitive possibility that they decide to go with other players at this position. But I am kind of going to put my neck out here a little bit, and I'm going to say that I think Donovan Peoples-Jones is not only going to make the roster, but he is also going to end up being the wide receiver that plays the 3rd most snaps. As far as the depth receivers go for this team, I do believe the Lions are going to end up keeping 5 receivers on the roster. Khalif Raymond is listed here as depth, but I think he's actually someone that's going to end up starting a lot of games for this team. In fact, he might be the kick and punt returner with the new kickoff rules. He's very good in that role. There are other players that are competing for that role as well, but I think it'll probably, when it's all said and done, be Khalif Raymond. He has experience in that role. He's a very good player. I like Khalif Raymond in that role a lot. And as a depth wide receiver, as someone as a third or fourth option, I think he can be a productive player. And also, I'm just a fan of speed on the field in general. I actually think Khalif Raymond is more likely to make the roster than Donovan Peoples-Jones. And we'll get to that in a moment. But moving down the depth here, Darius Fountain is someone that has reportedly been lighting up camp. This is someone who has stuck around in the NFL, I believe, for 5 or 6 years now. So even though he's not really someone who plays a whole lot, in fact, I believe he has 2 career receptions. However, he has stuck around for a reason, and he is someone that may be entering, hypothetically, the prime of his career, could end up finding his way onto the actual roster itself. I'm not necessarily buying into that. I think the Lions are more likely to keep other players. However, Darius Fountain does, in fact, bring that physical nature that the Lions don't actually have at the wide receiver position. Like, Donovan Peoples-Jones can play that role, but it's not even necessarily the best role for him as a player. I do think Darius Fountain is a more natural X receiver than someone like Donovan Peoples-Jones, is what I was trying to say there. But I don't buy into the idea that he's going to make the roster because of that. And even though he has been reportedly lighting it up during camp, that has died down a little bit as we approach the Lions' first preseason game here, which is actually in 2 days, as I'm recording this video. Tom Kennedy is someone that is always very productive during the preseason and has at times come in and actually made plays for this team the past few seasons. I think he's likely to remain as a practice squad kind of guy. I don't really see him being someone that makes the active roster. Maurice Alexander is someone competing with Khalif Raymond for the returner role. He has been on the team in that role before. Isaiah Williams is also someone who is, I believe, going to be competing for that role as well. I actually like Isaiah Williams. I had a 5th round grade on him in this past draft process. So I had a draftable grade on him. I think he could be a sneaky candidate to make the team outright as a returner, but also as someone that has potential to be a slot receiver or a deep threat potentially, because he is fast enough to do that. Antoine Green is the last player on the depth that I'm going to be talking about, really, in this video. He was a 6th round pick a couple years ago, and he flashed in preseason, his rookie year, and he is another bigger body guy that is actually very good. At least he was in college, very good at those 50-50 contested catching sort of situations, which, again, the Lions don't have. And I could see him making this team because of that, but also because of the athletic profile and his ability to potentially be a factor on special teams. Not as a returner, but as someone on kickoff or potentially punt/punt return as a blocker / tackler, because he is 6'2" and like 210 now. So he's big and athletic and fast, and he can get down there in a hurry. Moving on to how I see the depth chart shaking out here. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, and Khalif Raymond are locks to me. I think all 3 of them are going to be on this team. It would shock me if they cut Khalif Raymond, and they're most certainly not going to cut Jameson Williams / Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I consider all 3 of those players locks. I think Donovan Peoples-Jones is close to a lock. I lean more towards he's going to make the roster, but it wouldn't shock me. I would be surprised a little bit if he didn't make it, but it wouldn't shock me if he didn't. I'm putting Darius Fountain and Antoine Green in the 50-50 section, specifically Darius Fountain because of how well he has played in the early portion of camp. And Antoine Green is because I see upsides for him as both a role player in specific situations for the offense, as well as someone that I think could contribute if one of the top 4 or 5 wide receivers gets hurt, as well as his ability to potentially play on special teams. I think Antoine Green is in the 50-50 category. I think it's at this point in time when I'm recording this, which again is before the Lions' first preseason game, I think that Antoine Green is in that 5th spot for me. As far as practice squad candidates go, Maurice Alexander, Isaiah Williams, and Tom Kennedy are going to be those guys. I don't think Isaiah Williams makes it through waivers if he is cut. Similar to Khalil Pimpleton this past offseason, I don't think Isaiah Williams makes the team. And if he doesn't make the team, I don't think he makes it through waivers to go onto the Detroit Lions practice squad. As far as the tight ends go, the other players in the receiving core, Sam Laporta is phenomenal. Making the Pro Bowl as a rookie, as a tight end, is a big time deal. Even, TJ Hawkinson, who we drafted in the top 10 and ended up being a fantastic football player, is arguably the 3rd best tight end in the NFL right now. He sucked his rookie year. He was horrible. And for Sam Laporta to come in and be an elite caliber tight end in his rookie year is almost unheard of. Tight ends don't typically come in and play at that high of a level. However, Sam Laporta did. He is a superstar at the position. And, Travis Kelce and George Kittle are getting old. There's a definitive possibility in 2 to 3 years from now, we're looking at Sam Laporta as the best tight end in the NFL. And I believe he is going to get there. Now, as I kind of discussed in the quarterbacks video, the contract situation means we might have to make difficult decisions. But I really would like Sam Laporta to stick around. I believe he's going to be a perennial Pro Bowler and an elite caliber player that is just a mismatch nightmare for opposing teams. As far as the depth goes here, Brock Wright is going to be tight end 2, and Shane Zylstra, James Mitchell, Parker Hesse, and Sean McKeon are going to be the 4 players competing for that 3rd tight end spot. The Lions do typically carry 3 tight ends, and I am of the belief that they're going to continue to do that this year, given the amount of 12 personnel that they run out onto the field, or 2 tight end sets if you're unfamiliar with the terminology. And even among those 4, I really think it's just James Mitchell and Shane Zylstra that are competing for that 3rd tight end spot. However, I do think Parker Hesse or potentially Sean McKeon could make the team as a practice squad player. However, even going beyond that, I think there's a more significant possibility that the tight end on the practice squad is the loser of Shane Zylstra / James Mitchell. So Parker Hesse and Sean McKeon might end up kind of just being players that are on the outside looking in. As far as the depth chart for the tight ends go, this is how I see shaking it out. Sam Laporta and Brock Wright are locks. They are both going to be in the roster. I think Shane Zylstra and James Mitchell are the 2 players competing for that 3rd tight end spot. Right now, because of his ability as a blocker, I would lean towards Shane Zylstra making the roster more so than James Mitchell. Shane Zylstra was a quality depth tight end for the Detroit Lions. Didn't play last year. He tore his ACL in training camp, I believe. But don't forget about him. I think he's a player that is going to make this team. And practice squad guys are going to be Parker Hesse and Sean McKeon. I don't see a scenario where those guys end up making the team outright. But that's just me, and what do I know? I'm just some asshole on the internet giving you his opinion. To this point, I'd like to remind you to like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and if you disagree with me at any point, or you just have something to say, then go ahead and drop a comment down in the comment section below. And now with the outro done and out of the way, there's only one thing left to say, and that's that I'll see you next time.